Hello everyone. Today we are going to talk about the topic of decision making in soccer. How is it important for different processes? This presentation was developed by Professor Israel Teodo and me, Guilherme Machado. We are representing the Center of Research and Studies in Soccer, NUPEF, located at the Federal University of Viçosa in Brazil. NUPEF is one of the leading centers that develops research in soccer in Brazil and recognized internationally. For those who want to learn more about our services and products, please visit our website. The link will be available at the end of this presentation. Currently, the number of decision-making in a soccer match has been of wide interest to soccer practitioners, as the high cognitive demand of the game has direct and in some cases negative implications for players' performance. High demands for game reading and decision-making lead to increased reaction time, increased physical fatigue, loss of technical quality, greater dehydration at play, loss of the performance, greater difficulty in recovering between matches, and in some cases, greater likelihood of injury. Therefore, the quality of decision-making in football is an extremely important indicator of team success, especially in high-pressure environments. Thus, the assessment and control of the decision-making ability of soccer players is important to enhance their performance on the pitch. A difficulty encountered until recently was to obtain objective information regarding this ability. However, an online platform has recently been developed that allows objectively assessing this component. TactiCup is an online assessment platform that allows one to know objectively and assertively both game reading and decision-making skills. Based on real match situations and resorting to artificial intelligence, the player is assessed concerning the time he takes to read a play and make a decision for different situations within the game, which take place near or far from the ball. From the data obtained through TactiCup, coaches are able to learn his squad's real needs, with respect to their ability of reading the game and making decisions, and may therefore manage their training activities and intervention in a more individualized fashion, allowing time optimization and facilitating performance improvement of his players in the field. TactiCup can be useful to management staff as well, to assess the degree of players' understanding and reading of the game in their squad, from all age groups, and to check how training sessions are supporting a significant improvement of respect to players' tactical evolution. As for soccer schools, TactiCup allows generating and printing players' individual reports, as a means to provide objective information about the development of players' game reading and decision-making skills. Armed with this information, the coaching staff is able to support the qualification of the worker under development so as to control the activities and the interventions during the sessions in a more individualized and assertive fashion, to meet the real needs of the players with respect to their education and development. From the perspective of performance analysis, TactiCup provides easy and quick generation of individual and collective players' performance reports. Also, by acknowledging the limitations and possibilities with respect to players' game reading and decision making, analysts can design videos and provide information with greater emphasis on the aspects the players needs to improve, thus enabling higher effectiveness in their actions. Through the information generated by TactiCup, players are able to better acknowledge their potential, in addition to understanding the aspects they need to improve. Some pros and highlights of TactiCup are: objectivity. Obtain objective and scientifically verified data about all important components related to your player's movement across the field. Time saving. Access reports immediately following the assessment through the platform and use right away according to your needs, be it train optimization or definition of strategies for the match. Performance tracking. Keep track of players' evolution over time by staying up to date on their limitations and potentials. Performance enhancement. More assertive sessions that meet players' needs will allow them to develop faster and more solidly, thus improving their performance in training and matches. Custom reports. Generate individual and collective reports according to your needs for planning sessions to enhance your player's performance. Optimization of training time. Get to know your player's potential and limitations regarding game reading and decision making, so as to better organize training dynamics and improve match performance. The results from TactiCap are displayed graphically, allowing the visualization of the player's complete profile with respect to his game reading and decision-making skills. Information are organized so as to enable the visual and quick extraction of information regarding the player's offensive and defensive actions near or far from the ball. The graphic is organized as follows. The left side displays the results regarding the defensive actions. The right side displays the results regarding the offensive actions. The upper side displays the results regarding the actions performed near the ball. The bottom part displays the results of actions performed far from the ball. Therefore, it's possible to interpret the graphical information through a subdivision in quadrants. The upper left quadrant displays the results of the defensive actions near the ball. The upper right quadrant displays the results of offensive actions near the ball. The left bottom quadrant displays the results of the defensive actions far from the ball. And the bottom right quadrant displays the results of the offensive actions far from the ball. Considering the results of the player in this figure, it's possible to observe that overall, he displays better game reading and decision-making skills in the offensive actions than the defensive ones. He also exhibits greater ease in actions near the ball when compared to those far from the ball. In a more detailed interpretation of the results, it's possible to observe that this player has difficulties in offensive actions far from the ball, such as actions of movements behind the last line of defense, which is the tactical principle of mobility. And he also has difficulties in actions regarding the organization of the attacking line behind the ball line, thus allowing the team to play in a cohesive and balanced fashion across their longitudinal and transversal lines, which is the tactical principle of offensive unity. In this figure, the results of response time are displayed grouped according to each tactical principle in addition to the general, offensive, defensive, and overall index of a player. The results are organized according to the proximity of the actions of these principles, whereas those near the ball are located in the left side and those more distant in the right side. Also, the offensive principles are represented by the blue bars, while the defensive by the red ones. Therefore, from the visualization of this data, it's possible to observe that generally, such a player has the ability to respond more quickly in defensive rather than offensive actions. An example of offensive difficulty may be observed more clearly in the offensive actions in which the players assess and perform actions with the ball, be it progressing with the ball towards the goal or goal line, penetration, or even temporization, length and width with the ball. TactiCap collective results allow to examine the difference and similarities between athletes. This figure displays results regarding game reading and decision-making skills of 4 athletes from the same team, which play as defensive midfielders. Through these results, it's possible to verify, despite playing in the same position, these players display rather distinct profiles, which will certainly influence their functions and individual and collective performance in the field. Among these 4 athletes, we observe that players 1 and 3 display a more offensive profile, especially in situations near the ball, when compared to players 2 and 4. Hence, armed with this information, we have an indication that players 1 and 3 may be better at performing the role of defensive midfielders who participate more qualitatively at the offensive phase. In addition to assessing performance, it's possible to assess decision-making time. On the one hand, on the left side of this figure are the values of decision-making performance along with the blue bars. On the other hand, on the right side are the values of the decision-making time along with the black line. Therefore, it's possible to obtain more detailed information of each athlete when compared to their teammates. Through this figure, it's possible to verify, for instance, that players 6 and 7 display similar performance values for the principle of offensive coverage. However, with respect to response time, we observe that player 6 responds much faster to these game situations when compared to player 7. This information indicates that although player 7 is able to make correct decisions in these situations, he needs more time to read the situation and appropriately respond to it. Armed with this information, the coach staff may control more specifically and assertively the training tasks for the learning and development needs of the player. This line of reasoning can be used to any other players. Another way to visualize collective results is by displaying athletes' decision-making time and performance according to the tactical principle. Displaying information in such a way enables a more global idea on how the team is faring with respect to a collection of movements within the field, as well as obtaining more detailed information on how a given player is playing in comparison to his teammates. In this figure, it's possible to observe that the athletes within this team display, in general, better performance in the principle of offensive coverage, variation between 51 and 87 points, in comparison to the defensive principle of defensive coverage, variation from 19 and 74 points. In other words, this indicates that players display greater ease in actions of offensive support near the player in possession by generating passing lanes or space within the opponents. Defense for the player in possession to progress with the offensive coverage principle, rather than in actions of defensive support behind the back of the first defender, which is the defensive coverage. In regard to the decision-making time, it's possible to observe that overall, the players respond quickly to the actions of defensive coverage compared to the offensive coverage. This information allows obtaining an objective indication of the characteristics already developed by the athletes, thus backing the coach staff to plan their work in training for aspects that need to be developed, individually or collectively. Periodic assessment with TATCUP allows to keep track of the development of players' game reading and decision making. This figure displays the assessment of two players in three distinct moments over the year. Through these results, it's possible to verify that player 1 has two offensive skills already consolidated, indicated by the blue circles, as they maintain or slightly vary their performance over time. Also, it was possible to verify an evolution on the ability to provide offensive support to the player in possession by generating passing lanes or movements near the ball, which is the principle of offensive coverage. He also improved in movements behind the back of the last line of defense, generating more space to team's movement and or moving towards a more appropriate space to score the goal, which is the principle of mobility. As for player 2, it was also possible to observe two consolidated defensive skills, indicated by the blue circles, that are related to the player's capacity to balance his team defensive sector, which is the principle of defensive balance. We also perceived a stability in actions of protection of the goal, which is the principle of concentration. In addition, a decrease was observed in his capacity to provide offensive support to the player in possession, be it through the creation of passing lanes or through movements near the ball, which is the principle of offensive coverage. Armed with these results, it's possible to conclude that training has been effective for maintaining consolidating performance related to some movements in the field, and on the other hand, may be used to foster activities and feedbacks that seek to improve the understanding of some movements in the field that still display stability of the game comprehension and consequently of performance within the field. From the assessments made through TouchCup, it's possible to ask the coach or the coach staff to also perform an assessment of the athlete's ability to read the game and make decisions. By comparing these results, it's possible to verify the congruence between the coach's point of view and the athlete's real capacity. For instance, this figure displays on the left side a graph that represents the player's current profile, and on the right side the coach's perception of these athletes regarding these same capacities. By analyzing these two graphs, one notes a divergence between the coach's vision and the athlete's game reading and decision-making skills with respect to some movements within the field, such as situation of direct opposition for the defender on the player in possession, which is the principle of delay. In this case, the coach judges that his athlete has difficulty in reading these situations of the game and making assertive decisions. However, the player possesses high capacity to read these situations and respond assertively. With this information, the coach can acknowledge the athlete's real potential to perform movements of this kind in the field, and therefore adjust his needs or guidance aiming to improve his player's performance, as his demands were underestimating the player's real capacities. The same type of assessment that was done for the delay principle can be performed for each of the 12 items in the graph. Thus, it's possible to verify the points of convergence and divergence between the coach's perception and what the athlete really managed to accomplish. Case of a under 12 team. Organization of training based on the results of Touch Cup. The coaching staff of a highly competitive Brazilian under 12 team, which participates in international championships, evaluated its athletes through Touch Cup. They performed the assessment to learn about their players' game reading and decision-making skills. This information was used to qualify the training process, thus assisting the individual development of the athletes and the team's collective performance. In addition to pursuing this development, they also aimed to assess the effectiveness of their training for the development of players' game reading and decision-making skills, as well as to the improvement of tactical efficiency on the field. The Touch Cup test was the instrument used to assess players' decision-making and game reading skills, and the instrument used to assess tactical efficiency was the system of tactical assessment in soccer, FUTSAT. Both instruments assess the same parameters, the core tactical principles of soccer. The whole procedure occurred in 6 steps. The assessments were carried out twice. First, a diagnostic evaluation of players was carried out prior to the start of the systematic training intervention on May 2019. Second, an evaluation was carried out immediately after the end of the training intervention on July 2019. Following the first athlete's assessment, 25 training sessions were designed based on the individual needs of improvement or maintenance of decision-making skills with respect to the core tactical principles of soccer. These sessions were weekly planned, 4 sessions a week, taking into account players' development in previous training sessions and in competitions, as observed by the coaching staff. Players were ranked and sorted in 3 performance groups, according to each tactical principle, which were categorized as low, regular, and high performance groups. Throughout the 25 training sessions designed by the coaching staff, the first activity was focused on the core tactical principles of soccer, with the purpose of improving players' decision-making. These activities had average duration of 36.7 minutes per session, with a minimum time of 28 minutes and maximum time of 50 minutes. Next, we are going to show an example of a training session plan and how it was organized. The coaching staff discussed the aims of the training sessions in planning meets held at the start of each week, in which they select the coach responsible for supervising each activity and also define the feedbacks to be provided to the players, with respect to the performance indicators related to the tactical principles on which the activities were focused in each training session. Firstly, the coach staff discussed the aims of the training sessions in planning meets held at the start of each week, in which they select the coach responsible for supervising each activity and also define the feedbacks to be provided to the players, with respect to the performance indicators related to the tactical principles on which the activities were focused in each training session. The interactions within the activities were organized according to the athlete's performance levels. An athlete with high performance regarding the offensive principle of penetration against an athlete with high performance in relation to the defensive principle of delay. These interactions could be modified according to the context of a given proposed activity. Time control regarding the training contents taught during the 25 training sessions was carried out according to the groups of tactical principles, which are categorized as follows: offensive principles inside the center of play, penetration, offensive coverage, and width and length with the ball. Offensive principles outside the center of play, width and length without the ball, mobility, and offensive unit. Defensive principles inside the center of play, delay, defensive coverage and recover balance, and defensive principles outside the center of play, defensive balance, concentration, and defensive unit. This categorization was performed due to the spatial relations between these principles and the center of play, as well as their hierarchical relation within the teaching-learning process. The tactical principles performed inside the center of play display less complexity regarding their execution when compared to those performed outside the center of play. According to Teodo Guilherme and Garganta 2015, the center of play is a dynamic spatial reference employed to characterize where the game is played more intensively or quickly. Its radius is 9.15 meters from the epicenter of play. With respect to this space, it's assumed that ball transmission between teammates is facilitated when they are located inside the center of play and or when opponents are located farther than the distance of the radius and the player in possession needs to pass the ball to a teammate outside the center of play. In the case of the players located inside the center of play, ball transmission is facilitated, as the distance between the player in possession and the potential receiver is lower, thus allowing for more efficient technical actions and increase the ball transmission speed. As the activities and their interactions are planned according to the player's individual needs, the amount of training time for each principle was not similar for all players, taking the 25 training sessions into account. The training time of each player for each tactical principle is displayed in this table. Also, the contents taught in each training session are displayed in this chart. At the end of the 25 training sessions, the assessments of decision-making and tactical efficiency on the field were carried out again, using the same instruments, TacticUp and FUTSAT. The results showed an improvement in tactical performance on the field, especially in defensive principles inside the center of play. When the results of TacticUp were verified, it was observed that although there was no significant improvement in the quality of decision-making time decreased in those actions in which improvements in tactical performance were found. Therefore, we found that for these players, the improvement in tactical efficiency on the field is associated with the cognitive component of being able to read the game more quickly. Therefore, it was realized the importance of using the results of TacticUp to organize training sessions. It was verified that those 25 training sessions were effective to improve players' speed of game reading and tactical efficiency. Case of a under-17 team. Benefits of using TacticUp for the coaching staff and athletes. The head coach of a first league club in Brazil tells of his experience with the use of TacticUp. With the information provided by TacticUp, we started drawing our attention to the actions that the player needed to improve. The coaching staff reported that they started to define which offensive and defensive aspects they would stimulate for each athlete according to their needs. The coach staff started using individual action rules for each player, considering their individual needs based on the TacticUp results. We were able to anticipate some feedbacks that needed to be given for individual enhancement. The head coach reported a particular situation that occurred in his training. Considering the previous information of a certain player provided by the TacticUp, it allowed the coach to give more assertive feedbacks to these athletes in a much faster way. It could rather have taken several days or even weeks for the coach staff to realize this athlete's difficulty, without the objective information that they received from TacticUp. Through this, they focused the feedback on the critical information that the player needed, so that he could adapt his movement in those situations on the field according to what the coach staff expected. After 2 or 3 repetitions of these actions in training, This particular athlete was already performing the actions more effectively. In another situation, the coach performed a 2 versus 2 activity that was proposed after the results from touch-up were handled to work on the principle of defensive coverage. This principle is characterized by actions to ensure support to the first defender who is performing delay in relation to the player in possession of the ball. The coach realized that the result of a specific player showed that he had difficulty in this type of actions, although he and his coach staff had never noticed that. In possession of this information, they focused their eyes to see how this player performed such actions and found that, in fact, he had difficulty in making these moves. It was something they had not noticed before without these results. The coach told us, I realized that using such information allowed me to be much more effective and assertive on my training sessions. The most significant change in my training was that I started looking at what the players actually have in terms of potentialities and what they need to improve. With this information in my hands, I, as a coach, can make my players better. Touch-up allowed to qualify the work to the level of individual development of the athletes and at the collective level of the team. The assessment with Touch-up brought information that allowed working with a focus on improving the game model proposed for the team, by providing a better understanding of the players' characteristics and adjusting their functions within the field according to this and to the characteristics of the opponents they would face. As for the collective aspects of the team, the platform allowed to enhance the game model and adjust the strategy for each game, including possibilities for intervention during the game, depending on the game scenario. The coach also reported the way players perceived the benefits within this process. When we started the use of individual rules for the players in training, the interest of athletes started to increase due to this more individual focus and the improved feedback given to them. By the words of the players themselves at the end of the season, they reported that they felt very good when they started receiving feedbacks in a more individualized way and that they also felt more valued in addition to realize that this helped them to improve their performance. In the players' own words, what my coach is saying helps me and allows me to increase my performance on the field. Case of a under-20 team, improving competitive performance through touch-up. The head coach of an under-20 team from Brazilian First Division Soccer Club tells of his experience with the use of touch-up. With touch-up, you start to understand the player at an individual level and start working on the individual needs of each one. The Red Bull Brasil's under-20 team was evaluated with touch-up and the results were used to design 2 months of training sessions, considering the individual needs of the players and the collective needs of the team. The results of these assessments indicated that one of the midfielders of the team had difficulty reading the game and making decisions in situations of approaching the player in possession of the ball to give offensive support through the creation of pass lines. One of the forwards of the team had difficulty reading the game and making decisions on movements in the back of the last line of defense. We are going to present a video showing the outcomes of the use of touch-up results to design the training sessions for 2 months and how it can improve players' performance in the matches. From these results of TACCUP, the focus of individual work with these two athletes was to improve those aspects that they had difficulties. During the game presented at the video, it was observed exactly the performance of these movements on the field, in which the athletes 2 months before had difficulty in reading this type of situation and that consequently affected their decision-making capacity and their performance on the field. See what the head coach said about it. In this move, some athletes who have difficulty in carrying out some actions related to good performance, they started doing them in competition because of the previous training sessions, designed to promote individual and collective improvements. Basically, the tests allow us to understand easily and objectively the potentials and limitations of players regarding their tactical capacity. It allows us to be more assertive in our training sessions. We congratulate the high-level work carried out by this coach, and we wish him even more success in his football career. Since one of the objectives of TACCUP is to provide coaches with information that allows them to know the real needs of their group of athletes in what they do, regarding the reading of the game and decision making, and can thus direct their activities and interventions in the training sessions in a more individualized way, allowing them to optimize the training time and facilitating the gain of knowledge performance of their players on the field. TACCUP in the process of talent selection, case of under 14 team. The results from TACCUP can also be used in the context of talent selection in soccer, in different age groups. We will present a case of 20 under 14 athletes from a high-level competitive Brazilian soccer club participating in championships at international level. These athletes were evaluated through TACCUP in the second half of the 2019 competitive season. At the end of the competitive year, 10 athletes were not selected and 10 athletes were selected to continue on the team to make up the under 15 team the following year. After checking the results of the evaluations in TACCUP of all athletes and comparing the game reading and decision-making skills for these two groups, there was a substantial difference between the groups. It was found that a group of selected athletes had a better game reading and decision-making skills for the offensive principles outside the center of play, and for the defensive principles outside the center of play. These results highlight in particular the importance of developing the players of the under 14 age group, the game reading and decision-making skills, especially in actions outside the center of play, so that they remain in the process of sports development. In addition, looking for players who are being selected for the team that have a profile of this ability to read the game and develop decision-making apparently can help in the selection of the athlete. Undoubtedly, this variable must be evaluated in conjunction with other skills of this player, such as his technical, physical, and so on. TACCUP and talent selection, partnership with La Liga and Tero. We will report a successful partnership between three sports institutions, TACCUP, Tero, and La Liga. La Liga arrived in Brazil through the Bravo project to capture Brazilian players and find great potential talents in soccer. The selection process for Bravo started in November 2019 to select athletes between 16 and 19 years old who did not play in any soccer clubs. The first step for the interested athlete was to register online using the Tero platform. From the moment the registration is completed, the candidate started to be evaluated according to the tests performed through the online platform, carried out through TACCUP, and also through the video sent by the player himself. However, a problem that would have to be solved at this stage of the selection process was to be able to filter among thousands of subscribers which videos would be watched by the observers. This solution was achieved through objective information from TACCUP reports, which are generated immediately after the end of the evaluation. With that, it was possible to select hundreds of players that met the profile initially defined by La Liga, so that observers could watch their videos. This process was always carried out following the La Liga methodology for evaluating new talents. Therefore, the choice of La Liga for TACCUP to evaluate players was due to objectivity of the evaluations based on scientifically proven assumptions, ease of application of evaluations in a country with continental dimensions such as Brazil, quick generation of reports, assumptions of evaluations consistent with the philosophy of La Liga. After this online step of the selection process, the selected players were invited to play on-site at the Bravo Training Center. Therefore, the selection process of these players was continued so that they had more chance of being seen and arouse the interest of Spanish clubs. Tactic Up in Soccer Schools, from implementation to success. A soccer manager for a soccer school company with more than 60 units shares his experience about implementation of Tactic Up on his company. This manager was looking for a solution for his company because the school had a gap. This gap was the lack of assessment protocols and the control of training quality. It was the moment that this manager saw Tactic Up to be implemented in the school franchises. This soccer school has its own methodology and needs to be replicable within their 60 units in different cities and countries. The implementation of Tactic Up generated financial gains to the company due to the process of optimization they have achieved. It happened due to a greater inflow of students, a decrease in the cost of the selection process carried out by the franchises, and through a decrease in the number of employees required to carry out the athlete's assessment. In order to enter the school, students underwent periodic presential tryout sessions once a month. After these tryouts, students started their activities at the soccer school and were placed to groups more compatible with their performance. Through the use of the Tactic Up, it was possible to modify this process and allow students to enter with continuous flow through this assessment that could be carried online. In addition, as the results are generated automatically by the Tactic Up system, students now have access to their reports immediately after the assessment, which increased the retention of new students. In addition, they increased the number of students served. They started receiving enrollment requests from students from different cities due to the more practical and online assessment process for selecting new students. With this scenario, the service portfolio was expanded, and the company started providing sports advice for athletes considering their needs of improvement based on their Tactic Up assessment. The soccer manager gave his testimony. I did not expect that with the implementation of Tactic Up, the benefits that were expected for the school would be noticed that fast. In the first week we implemented the online tryout through Tactic Up, we received the number of registrations expected for the whole month. The school owners also shared their experience with Tactic Up. The greatest benefit that we have seen in this implementation at our school is the scalability, flexibility, and assertiveness of Tactic Up to evaluate athletes. The school coaches also gave their opinion about Tactic Up. Coaches can learn, in part, about their players before they start field activities with them. The coach will have objective information about players' game reading and decision-making skills, optimizing training time more assertively to develop the player according to their individual characteristics. The information provided by Tactic Up may benefit players in different ways. They might identify new positional tasks and roles that better suit the player's characteristics, participate in trainings that are more individualized to their own needs. They can also follow their development objectively. Now we are going to show a tutorial explaining how to create your account, how to do the online assessment, and how to access the results at Tactic Up online platform. Hello to everyone. So now I'm going to show how to register your institution. It can be a club or a soccer school if you are a manager at this institution. First, we have to go to the Tactic Up website, so just have to type tacticup.com.br, and then you have to click at Football Professional Login. Just here. In case you are already registered at the platform, you just have to insert your information here, but if you are not, you just can click here to register. So I will insert my information here, and then the password, and then click at login. Okay, these options will appear. You just have to click here to register club, insert the name of your institution, choose the category. You just have to choose what best fits to you, to your context. Okay, the city and the country, and insert the address. You also can choose the logo of your club. And that's it. It's very quick and very simple to create a club at the TouchCube platform. So finally, you just have to click at create. Now I'm going to present how the interface of the club works at the TouchCube platform, and I'll explain since how to register different categories to your club up to how to generate the reports of the players. So it's basically divided into 3 steps that I will explain. The first step, you have to register the category, like an under 15 team, and also add the players to this category. And the second step, you have to create the test application and also to add the players that will participate in this test application. And in the third step, I will show you how to generate the reports after these players have already done the test. Okay, so let's start with the first step to create and to register a category at your club. You just have to click here and then you click add. So I will create the under 15 category in my club, and then you have to click save. That's it. It's already created here, so you can see it's already here. Now I will add the players to my category. So you have to click here, and then I will type the name of the player that I want to add to my category. It's important to know that the player has to be already registered at the platform. Okay, so let's insert. This is the player that I'm looking for. These are the personal information just to double check, and then you click add and confirm. Okay, I will add another player. This is the second player. Click add and confirm. And I'm going to insert another player. Okay, this is the player that I'm looking for. That's it. I have already done. I registered this category and added the players. So in the next video, I will show you how to do the second step. Continue what I have already explained about how to register the categories in the club and how to add the players to these categories. Now I'm going to show the second step, that is how to create a test application and how to add these players to this application. So let's go, click here, test application, and then you click this button and click add. So you have to name this test application. Put this name under 15, April 2020. You also have to choose the expiration date, which is the deadline that the players have to do the test. You also can choose the report access. It can be available for both players and managers of the club to see these results, or only for the manager. I will leave like this, like the custom settings, and then you have to click here and save. Okay, it's already created here. You can see it's the only test application created in this club, so it's already selected. And now you have to add the players. This window will appear and you will see the players that are already registered at the under 15 category. And you also can look for a player by typing his name or his nickname here. You can choose a specific position or the year of birth. So there are these three filters available and they can be used together as well. So we choose these three players and then click at confirm. Okay, these tests were sent for the players and they have to log in at their accounts to perform the tests. So next I'm going to show how the players will see how it appears in their accounts. How I just mentioned, we are now in the player interface and you can see that here he has already done 2 tests and the test sent by the club is this one. So here you can see the deadline to perform the test, and to perform it you just have to click at this green button here. So after he performed the test and finishes it, this test will be available for the club in its interface. In the previous videos, I've shown how to create a club, how to register different categories and add players to these categories, and also how to create test applications and add the players to these test applications. So afterwards, the players have already done these tests. I'm now going to show how to pay for these tests and how to generate the individual and collective reports of these results. There are 2 ways to do this. The first option that you can generate these reports is by clicking at test application, and then you pay for the test, and also you can generate the reports. But I'm going to show a different pathway that you can do this. That is by clicking here in special tests. By clicking here, the tests that appear are tests that are received from players that are not in the squad, such as players that are participating in tryouts in the club, but the logic is the same. So I'm going to click here now. In this window, there are the tests that were sent for the club. So you can see here many tests, and I will choose to see 50 tests by this window. Okay, and you also can choose to see a specific test by typing the name or the nickname of a player. There are filters available as well, so you can choose by different position, by the region, by the status, by the payment status, and also the conclusion date of this test. And finally, you can choose also the year of birth. You can use more than one filter just to fit what you need. I'm not going to use any filter now, so I'm going to click at cancel. You will see here that there are different icons. So this icon in orange means that the test must be paid, and this icon in blue means that it's already available, so it was already paid. To pay the test, it's very simple. You just have to click here and then click on buy. Here you see how many credits do you have, and it says how many credits it costs. So I will click buy, and that's it. This report is already available to be seen. I'm going to show how to generate this report, the individual report. I'm going to click here, and then you have here the information about the report, the general indexes, the decision time is here, and here you can see the offensive indexes, the defensive index, and the graphic information about the report. So you just have to click at download, and the report will be generated in PDF. I'm not going to do this now, so I'm going to go back in special tests and show you how to generate a collective report. So I want to generate a report with my attacking midfielders and my center forward players. So I will click here, filter, and 9 players were selected with these characteristics. So I'm going to select all of them, okay? And then I will click here and generate collective report. When I click here, this window will appear. You can choose and change the name if you want of this report, the club institution, to insert the category name. And also you can choose to generate this report in different languages. We have 3 languages available right now: Portuguese, Spanish, and English. I will choose English. And you can download this in 2 different ways. You can choose to download as a spreadsheet that's generated an Excel document, and you also can choose to download this as a PDF. I'm not going to do this right now, so I will click at cancel, and that's it. So you have learned how to register your institution at the TACHICUP platform. You also saw how to register the categories in your institution and how to add the players to these categories. You also saw how to do the test application and add the players to this test application and how it appeared for them. And finally, how to pay for the test and generate both the individual and collective results. Many clubs and soccer schools are using the TACHICUP platform. These institutions from different countries are some of those. For the development of the assessment methodology and the online platform used by TACHICUP, many institutions collaborated. Initially, we have received a contribution from Europe through the ALBUM program. The Brazilian government also collaborated through the grants received by the institutions CNPq, FAPEMIG, CAPES, and SEBRAE. Furthermore, TACHICUP was chosen among around 1,500 companies to develop its technology in the Brazilian program for innovative companies called SEED. We want to thank these institutions for their contributions. More information about the indexes and principles evaluated at TACHICUP is contained in this book that can be found at this link, or you can find this information in this article available at this link. You can find further information about the Center of Research and Studies in Soccer and TACHICUP on the website, Instagram, or make contact by mail if you have any queries. The author's contacts are also available. Thank you very much for your attention.